Welcome back to the Musicians Creating Prosperity podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Fabiana Claure. And today we're going to talk about how you can grow your audience by having fun and leveraging what you have as a musician already, which is your performing skills. I love webinars, I love workshops, I love creating live conversion events where I can gather a bunch of people and present and interact and teach and actually learn from a live audience. Similarly to how we work as musicians, where we thrive on stage, where there's always an element of adrenaline, of anxiety, sometimes of performance fright, if you will. At the same time, that adrenaline gets an electricity in the room and creates an environment that is really, really hard to replicate in other settings. And what I love about creating live conversion events, it's that just like performing, you have the opportunity to connect in such a deep way with your audience, to share your expertise, to change their perspective, and to help elevate their vision for what's possible, whether it's around learning music, whether it's around overcoming performance-related injuries, whether you teach how to enter universities and win competitions, whatever you do as a musician, entrepreneur, or other creative, being able to create a live event where you teach in real time and connect with people allows you two things. Number one, to create a deep and meaningful connection, and also to do it in a leveraged way. If you've been following me, you know that I love leverage. I love to create systems and allow things to run on their own, to a certain degree in autopilot, if you will. And although having one-on-one conversations is a great way to understand the pain points of your ideal clients and to be able to create deep connections and transformational conversations, the opportunity to do it in a one-to-many format where you can speak to a bunch of people at once and get their input and continue adapting your presentation based on the responses you're getting in real time is just like a performance experience. It's priceless. So I want to encourage you to perhaps, if you've been hesitant about building your business through live conversion events and maybe afraid of the performance aspect of building a webinar or a workshop or a live masterclass, in today's episode, I'm going to uncover my favorite strategies for how you can demystify what can be perceived as obstacles and instead leverage your natural skills that you have as an artist, as a musician, and learn how to monetize your skills, having fun, creating connection, and above all, creating a difference. So the first part about creating these types of conversion events is that you need to have clarity around what do you want people to walk away from the event thinking and feeling. In which way will your event, whether it's a 1.5 hour, 90-minute webinar or a full 5-day masterclass, what do you want people to feel at the end of that experience? It's important that you begin this process with the end in mind rather than getting too caught up in the details that you're going to need to set it up in the first place. Why? Because when you're clear on the outcome, similarly to when you build an actual program and you have an offer to put in place to offer people, it's important that you're clear on what is the result that you want people to achieve. And when you're building your first conversion event, or if you're trying to optimize your conversion events, knowing what you want people to feel, how you want them to think about their situation, perhaps change their perspective around the problems that they perceived. Most of the times, these events are going to give you an opportunity to switch their mind, right? To help them see that perhaps they were focusing on the wrong problem. Perhaps the problem they think they had, whether it was learning how to improve on their instrument or any other challenge that they perceived, maybe they were going about it the wrong way. And your webinar, your masterclass can be what unlocks a new secret, a new way of fixing their problem, that until they came to that event, they may have been continuing to go on the old models and just continue to stay stuck. So thinking about what is the big epiphany that you want people to feel and to change their perspective. And when you understand that end goal, every other aspect of designing your conversion event, from the promotion, from the designing of the actual content, to the interactions, to who you're even going to attract and target in this type of event, will be very, very clear because you know what is the ultimate goal. So the best way to do this is understanding ultimately, what does your program, your offer that you are potentially going to be introducing at the end of your event, right? We all know that creating a conversion event is giving people an overview, a taste of our expertise. But ultimately, the true transformation can only happen when people work with us in a full capacity, whether you have a 3-month program, a 6-month program, whether you have a product, a specific service that you offer. The truth is, if you are a creator, if you are an entrepreneur and you're building a service-based business, you know that until people work with you in their full container, they won't actually get the full result. So what can your event do? Well, it can educate people about the benefits of your framework, of your philosophy, of your methodology, so to speak, right? So there are different ways that you need to come to clarity around what is your methodology. These are kind of going beyond the framing of this particular episode, but I want to make sure that you don't bypass this. Before you even think about creating a masterclass or a webinar, you need to understand, number one, what is the goal? What do you want people to feel at the end of this event? Number two, what is your framework, right? You should have a process, whether it's 3 to 5 steps, milestones that you know you can help people achieve in order to get to the desired result. Whatever problem you solve, you should have some sort of a system, right? And if you don't, then there's other episodes in this podcast that you can dive into and explore more how you can create your offer and design your systems and all those sorts of things. There's a ton of episodes that can dive into that. But for today's podcast, we want to make sure you understand that your system is going to be the star of the event. When you can showcase how your methodology can get people a specific result in a way that no other methodology can, that's your gold, right? So coming back to having a clear idea on what do you want people to feel, how do you want them to perceive their situation, their problems, and then how does your system get them to that next goal that perhaps they've been missing because they've been going about it in the wrong way. Having those two things clear will give you the confidence and the clarity around how to design the rest of the masterclass, right? The rest of your webinar. Now, in addition to having the clear end, the system, then it's going to be very important for you to understand who is the best person who is going to benefit from this framework. Who's the ideal client that needs this result? And although if you're like most musicians, you want to help everyone. You want your music and your talent and your expertise to make a difference as far wide as possible. And I appreciate that. But at the same time, you need to think more strategically around who has this problem that you are uniquely equipped to help solve, and what are the unique personality traits of this ideal client, right? Why is this important? Because when you promote your masterclass, when you promote your webinar, your content needs to speak very directly and intimately to the person you want to attract. And if you're envisioning all sorts of people in different age groups with different pain points, different situations, unfortunately, that will dilute your well-intentioned message. So the purpose of this podcast is to help you become sharp and to help you be strategic and understanding the best ways to grow your business, to make that impact, and to save yourself time from trial and error, right? So having the clear picture of who would you like to attract into this event, why is this, masterclass or webinar uniquely timed for this type of person? Now, it's not enough to talk about your framework. It's also important to address why this framework matters now. Why? Because there's a lot of opportunities. We all know that every day you may get bombarded with options to do free events, masterclasses, webinars, and your ability to communicate the timeliness of your event is also going to be very critical, right? There are seasonalities in the business. For example, there may be a moment where the academic year is starting and all typical music students or music teachers are setting their schedules, so to speak, deciding what they're going to commit to for the school year. Or if you are transitioning from the academic year into the summer season. So there's periods where there's shifts where people are looking for engaging in new activities, maybe doing something different that they usually wouldn't do under a normal academic year. So being sensitive to the seasonality of your industry, and obviously in the music industry, the school year is a big part of it. When the year ends, when the year begins, traditionally when I started my first business, which is a brick and mortar music school called Superior Academy of Music based in Miami, we thought that September would always be the highest season of the year. And actually now 13 years later, every single year, typically January is the highest season because people make New Year's resolutions. They decide that they want to start something new. It's a great opportunity to set new intentions, new commitments, right? And so there's a seasonality to the end of the calendar year and the beginning of the next year. So you need to think about what does that look like for you in your business, the specific service you're offering. How can you leverage the seasonality of your business so that when you promote your masterclass, you explain not only why this is going to help your ideal clients, but also why now, right? So when I did my very first 5-day masterclass, this was in May of 2020, I remember I felt a lot of uncertainty and a sense of wonder of what was going to happen. And I think I had like 60 people register for it. And it felt like such a huge milestone for me. And I remember just showing up from a place of service and really being willing to teach what I believed people needed to hear. We were in the height of the pandemic, and I had a vision to really helping musicians change the way they had been thinking about their careers, especially given that at the time, everything was upside down. There were no venues, there were no performance opportunities, there were no ways where musicians could be in person with their students. The need to build an online way of working was more relevant and urgent than ever before. So I showed up with this desire to create an impact and share the message that musicians needed to expand the way they thought, not only transferring the same model, teaching one-on-one lessons, doing it on Zoom, but reinventing their entire model so that they could now leverage asynchronous instruction, be able to use videos back and forth and not depend on trading their time exclusively in order to earn an income. So I would love for you to maybe, as you're watching this episode or listening to this episode, think about what is your calling card? What is this part of what you're doing that you're passionate about conveying? How can you present what you're teaching from this place of true excitement? Because believe me, if you're excited about what you're teaching, people will feel that as well, right? So although we can talk about strategies and logistics and tactics, nothing beats the underlying passion and commitment that you're going to have for what you're going to be teaching. And why is that important? Because the topic of your presentation needs to then help your audience understand what is the value of your actual service, your longer program. What's a 3-month, a 6-month, a year-long program? How does this initial taste of your knowledge give them a breakthrough, an epiphany? How can they feel that they're getting so much value and also feel like there's still a lot more to do, right? That would lead them to want to take that next step, which is what you know will ultimately get them the final result. So you want to think about all of this in a very strategic way, right? Where not only are you thinking with the end in mind of what do you want them to feel, to believe at the end of your event, but also you want to understand how does that segue into your actual offer, right? So building the entire framework from your offer structure, from how does this offer connect to your event, then who are the people that are going to need that event? And even before you present your event or you start promoting your event, there's another step that I want you to consider, which is warming up your community, warming up your audience. You see, if you are like most of the musicians that I work with, chances are you haven't necessarily been creating content very actively. You haven't been that strategic. You haven't had the clarity around why to create content and how to create a cadence, let's say. And so if you just think about all of the sudden popping up a masterclass or a webinar and offering it to your audience and asking for them to sign up, chances are you're going to be very disappointed because they're going to wonder where all of this came from. There's no pre-offer nurture, if you will. And so as we continue going from the end to the beginning steps, as you may notice, this is what I'm doing in the whole podcast, starting from the end and going backwards, right? So after we talked about what to present, how to talk about it, now let's talk about what you do before you even invite people into your event, which is your content needs to address the problem that your masterclass will solve. What does that mean? I like to make analogies between musical harmony and business. So in musical harmony, we have dominant harmonies that resolve into tonic harmonies. I call this my dominant tonic framework. What does that mean? Before you give a solution, you need to create a pain point. And in music, the pain point is the dominant harmony that creates tension, energetically creates instability, and asks for a resolution, right? And so when you're creating your event, when you're designing how to position that, part of it is thinking of this dominant tonic framework. Why? Because if all you do is present the tonic and present the solution and say, hey, I've got this masterclass coming up, I've got this webinar, do you want to sign up? No one will sign up because you haven't created a need for that webinar. Does that make sense? So what I want you to think about is how can you now, knowing all these steps that I helped you build, how can you now think about what is your dominant that you're going to share in your content to start getting people curious about it, to start getting people to think about the problem. And it's not necessarily your offer. It's not your service, right? You need to take a few steps back from that. And you need to think about What is the problem that you want to call out in the industry? What is the thing that you believe should be different, should change? What do you stand for? And also, what do you stand against? And how can your content that you just start posting about organically through your network, it does not have to be blasting with ads or any of that. Trust me, all of this can be done 100% organically without needing to invest in advertising yet. Why? Because if you start putting money on ads and investing in advertising without having validated your offer, without having tested it in the market first, without knowing what sticks, what doesn't, then you may accidentally waste a lot of money putting dollars behind something that's not yet proven, if you will. Doesn't mean your offer is not a good quality offer, but everything requires testing, right? So be smart about this. I'm not mentioning needing to do any advertising, but yes, absolutely going to any platforms that you're in, even if you haven't been there as active as you would have wanted to, just starting a conversation around your convictions about this problem, your perceptions, your beliefs, the things you would want to see different, without even mentioning your upcoming webinar, without even mentioning, of course, your offer. And so when you start that conversation, when you start getting people excited or curious or maybe even controversy, you can create some controversy in a polite way, then you have their attention. That is the highest commodity in today's online space. Believe it or not, if you can get people's attention, you're halfway there. So how do you get people's attention? You start creating a conversation around a problem that people, not everyone, but certain people will resonate with, right? So that's how you start this process, talking about the problem before you talk about the solution. And then when you have people engaged, when you're starting to see the responses, then you can start presenting the solution and perhaps a perspective around the solution. And that could take 2 to 3 weeks, right? And once you are in that mode of having been talking about the problem, having been highlighting that dominant, then you can start introducing the opportunity for your free event, sharing with people, hey, I've got this masterclass coming up where I'm going to be talking about the 3 steps that I take to solve this problem, how you can change ABC, XYZ to get to ABC, XYZ, right? And so now you've got people's attention, you get their interest, and now they're much more likely to sign up for your free event. Now, when they sign up, that's not the end of the story, because guess what? The minute they signed up for your event, chances are they signed up for 3 events after that day. And so your challenge from that point on, once again, is attention, right? How do you get them not just to sign up, but to show up? And that's another challenge that you need to be aware of, right? And so getting people to show up requires connection. Knowing that your goal is just, the first part is to get them to sign up, but then you have to build connection. Think about fun ways where you can reach out to the people who sign up. One of the things that I love talking about and sharing with the musicians I guide is just ask your audience, what are they looking for in their event? Like, what are their needs? What are they struggling with to help you create the content for the event? And there's nothing wrong with that. You're not going to appear as a novice. You're not going to appear like you're not knowing what you're doing. Quite the contrary. You're going to appear as a savvy researcher who wants to make sure that the content you're going to offer them is going to be directly personalized to what they're looking for. And that adds value and that creates curiosity. So finding ways to engage with the people who signed up for your event, whether it's sending them a welcome email, sending them a text, starting conversations, whether it's just you or whether you have someone on your team, but making that a specific point that will ensure that you not only get people to sign up, but most importantly, to show up, right? So let's talk about why creating these conversion events can accelerate your business in so many ways. Well, here's the thing. The main pillars that I always recommend for musicians to grow their businesses are creating content and connecting with people. But there's only so many hours in the day that you can connect on a one-on-one basis, right? If you're having individual conversations, which you should, there's going to be a limit with how many of these you can have in a given day because we have limited time. So creating these conversion events allows you to gather, as I said earlier in the episode, a bunch of people at once, share with them your expertise, give them an opportunity to experience breakthrough, and then extend a one-to-many invitation to talk to you, right? Typically, if you are presenting a high-ticket program, which if you're in this podcast, if you're listening to this podcast, chances are you're interested in doing that rather than a low-ticket kind of self-paced course. If you're going to be pitching a high-ticket program, anything from $2,000 plus, chances are people won't just go to a page and click buy. They're going to need to have a conversation with you. So what this type of conversion event will do for you is will give people an opportunity to create that know, like, and trust factor, to learn, to see that there's still a lot more that you can teach them. and then to book a call to be able to discuss how you can create a personalized plan for them to solve the problem that they came to fix, right? And so that's something that when you have a live conversion event, you can literally do with dozens and dozens of people at once. And yes, eventually you're going to have a lot of one-on-one calls, but you'll be able to get them booked in a short period of time, maybe 1 to 2 weeks, and you'll be able to create a significant boost in your revenue. This strategy has allowed my business to be able to create 6-figure leaps from one conversion event. So if you're serious about this, I want to encourage you not to shy away from it and to actually realize that as a musician entrepreneur, you can leverage your performance and your performance skills, your communication skills, as long as you commit to creating this type of mastery, let's put it this way, because this is the other part. You don't want to just do it once. Would you think about performing once and going on stage and never doing it again? Chances are you wouldn't go very far if you did it, right? So the beautiful thing about creating these masterclasses, these live events, is that you get to do it over and over and over again and develop mastery, right? Mastery comes from repetition. So don't take yourself too seriously. If you're still new to this, it's okay if it doesn't come out the way you wanted it. It's okay if no one shows up. It's okay if a few people show up and no one signs up later. Forgive yourself. Don't think that you have to make it perfect and that if it doesn't come out perfect the first time, it's doomed. Be willing to approach this with a beginner's mindset. I still approach this with a beginner's mindset, and I do this every other month. I've been doing it for the last 4 years in my business, and I don't think I'll ever stop. I love creating these events and connecting with people in a deep way. But it is always a learning process. And let me tell you a story. I once did a webinar, and I hated it so much after the first time. It wasn't my first time doing it, but probably was within a year of having done it. And I just did a one-off webinar. And after it, I felt like I had bombed it. I felt like I had missed the mark. And I remember just doing an encore the next day and just say, I'm just going to do the whole thing all over again. And I sent a message to I had like maybe 40, 50 people who had registered. And I sent everyone a message. Not everyone showed up, of course. So I said, I'm going to do an encore. I'm going to do my webinar again tomorrow, back by popular demand. For those of you who wanted to be there and couldn't, I'm going to do it all over again. Come on by, join me. And I did not send the replay of the first one. And I just kept, and I just did it all over again. You know what I mean? So know that nothing is permanent. You could always delete whatever you didn't like and just do it all over again and just approach it with a playful attitude. The more you take this, as I said, with a playful attitude, with a spirit of learning, and ultimately focusing on why you're doing this. When you're focused more on the reasons why you want to develop this mastery, the reasons why you want to reach a bunch of people at once, why is that important? Yes, of course you want to grow your business, but most importantly, you want to make an impact. And that's what this is all about. So I hope you're inspired by this. Of course, if you have any feedback, any questions, I'd love to hear from you. And I have my upcoming conversion event coming up in a few days. If you want to sign up and watch me do this in real time, live, definitely you can go. There's going to be a link in the show notes where you can sign up and register. I would love for you to join me in this event. I'm going to be walking you through the 5 steps that I guide musicians on how to package their skills into an online music business and be able to create a system that allows them to transfer their knowledge to their clients, to their students, to whoever they work with, rather than trading their time, to be able to help their clients achieve results, solve their problems, but doing it by downloading their expertise, by interacting in group modalities, and leveraging the asynchronous instruction opportunities that we can now leverage through the online space. So if you're curious and you would love to see me do this in real time, then go to the link in the comments, and I would love to have you register and join us for this free masterclass. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Until next time, let's prosper together.